There were credible reports last night, specifically from the veteran political journalist Mark Halperin, that a CNN anchor by the name of Jake Tapper has been busy doing something he's notorious for doing, which is angrily DMing people who bothered him in some way. Apparently, Jake Tapper has been on a warpath lately. Nobody on X is safe. I have no way of verifying these reports myself because, strangely enough, Tapper did not DM me last night. He didn't berate me in any way, so I really can't comment based on any personal experience. But it's quite possible that after this segment, maybe Tapper will slide into my DMs too. And that's because after much consideration, I have to join in with pretty much everyone else on the internet and indeed everyone else in the world and relentlessly mock Jake Tapper for utterly humiliating himself, as well as the alleged news network that employs him. Of course, at this point, we're all used to brazen lying and hypocrisy from CNN employees. That comes with the territory. These are people who told us that Russian collusion was real, that Nick Sandmann was a racist, that Joe Rogan took horse medicine, that Hunter Biden's laptop was fake, that George Floyd didn't die of a fentanyl overdose, on and on and on. So it takes a lot, given CNN's illustrious reputation for flagrantly lying, to somehow degrade the reputation of the company even further than it's already been degraded. But somehow this week, against all odds, Tapper has accomplished just that. Here's the moment that I'm talking about, with an inexplicable tone of pride in his voice. Jake Tapper just announced that you can pre-order his new book, which is all about the cover-up of Joe Biden's cognitive decline ahead of the 2024 election. Tapper co-wrote the book with a reporter for the left-wing propaganda outfit known as Axios, so it's a real meeting of the minds, you might say. And as you could tell from this promo, Jake Tapper wants to make it very clear that he had nothing to do with the cover-up that he's reporting on. He implies that he had absolutely no role in hiding the fact that Biden's brain had transformed into applesauce. Watch.
I want to tell you about a journalistic project I've been working on. It's a book to be published on May 20th by Penguin Press, which you can pre-order right now. It's called Original Sin: President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again. As viewers of The Lead know, I've been covering the concerns about President Biden's age and health for years. I literally asked him about it in October 2022, and we've challenged Democrats and White House officials about it. But Alex Thompson of Axios and I have spent the last several months talking to more than 200 insiders and officials and donors and activists, more willing to talk post-election, of course, to explain the last couple of years in politics and how we as a nation got here with never-before-heard stories from behind the scenes. You will not believe what was really going on. You can pre-order the book at originalsinbook.com.
Tapper mentions that back in October of 2022, he asked Biden directly about his cognitive decline. Actually, he says he literally asked Biden. He literally asked him. Oh, you did, Jake? You literally asked him? So you didn't figuratively ask him or metaphorically ask him? You didn't draw him a picture with the question? So you literally asked him. Thanks for clarifying that it was a literal question. But he asked one question several years ago, so that's supposed to lend him credibility on the topic. You're meant to conclude that Jake Tapper isn't involved in the cover-up based on this piece of information. But just for fun, I went and pulled up the October 2022 interview between Tapper and Joe Biden. And here's how Tapper confronted Biden about his cognitive decline. Here's how he literally asked him. This is the big moment he's referring to in that promo. And this is one question at the tail end of a 15-minute interview. And here it is.
You're about to turn 80 next month. Happy birthday ahead of time. Whenever anyone raises concerns about your age, you're the oldest president in the history of the United States, you always say, watch me. Voters have been watching you. Democratic voters approve of the job you're doing. Democratic voters overwhelmingly like you. But one poll shows that almost 2/3 of Democratic voters want a new nominee in 2024. And the top reason they gave was your age. So what's your message to Democrats who like you, who like what you've done, but are concerned about your age and the demands of the job?
Well, they're concerned about whether or not I can get anything done. Look what I've gotten done. Name me a president in recent history that's gotten as much done as I have in the first 2 years.
Yes, Jake Tapper says, happy birthday. And then he tells Biden that Democrats approve of the job he's doing. He also tells Biden they overwhelmingly like him. And then he says that, according to one poll, voters want a new nominee. And he gives Biden the opportunity to respond to that poll. In other words, Tapper offered Biden the easiest softball question you could possibly ask in response to an issue that he couldn't possibly ignore under the circumstances. He had to ask at least something, and so that's what he did. He didn't directly bring up Biden's cognitive disability at all. Instead, he gave Biden the opportunity to diffuse the criticism about the fact that he's senile by teeing up a talking point. This is how Tapper supposedly demonstrates that he's not a part of the cover-up about Joe Biden's age. This is how he demonstrates that he's on the side of objectivity when it comes to this topic. Unfortunately, for the image that Tapper wanted to create, at one point in this interview, Biden dropped his cheat sheet with his talking points, and Tapper handed it back to him. Watch.
Economically and politically, we still have real problems. But look what we got done. We passed so much legislation that significantly makes a point about, for example, the American Rescue Plan.
Now, that was an interesting opportunity. It would have been very interesting if Jake Tapper had thought to ask what was on that paper or why Biden needed it. But apparently that didn't cross his mind during this thorough assessment of Biden's cognitive abilities. Tax season's here again, and the IRS isn't messing around in 2025. Look, I get it. Tax problems are about as fun as a root canal. Maybe you've got some unfiled returns collecting dust, or you're sitting on a pile of back taxes that's giving you night sweats. And with April 15th breathing down your neck, it's tempting to just walk into the woods alone, never look back, and hope it all goes away. But here's the thing. Trying to ghost the IRS, well, that's like trying to outrun a bear. Spoiler alert, it does not end well. And that's why you should let Tax Network USA deal with this headache for you. These folks aren't your average tax people. They've got a direct line to the IRS. Apparently that's a thing, so they know exactly which agents to talk to. Whether you're in the hole for 10K or 10 mil, they've got tricks up their sleeves that actually work. They've already sorted out over $1 billion in tax debt, so they must be doing something right. Talk with one of their strategists today. It's free. Stop the threatening letters, stop looking over your shoulder, and protect yourself from property seizures and bank levies. Don't let the IRS control your future. Call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Walsh. April 15th is just around the corner, so act now before the IRS acts first. Now, if you didn't pull up any of this footage from 2022, you might take Tapper at his word. You might think that he was tough on Biden and maintained his journalistic objectivity the whole time. But it actually gets a lot worse for Tapper. That's because back in 2020, as you may have seen, Jake Tapper interviewed Lara Trump about her criticisms of Joe Biden. And throughout the interview, he repeatedly interrupted her and scoffed at her constantly. In fact, was offended by the suggestion that Biden was cognitively impaired. And most notably, he kept insisting that Biden has a stutter, which is apparently supposed to explain why he can't speak or think clearly. This is footage that apparently launched a million angry Tapper DMs last night. This is what he was so upset about. Here it is.
Every time he comes on stage or they turn to him, I'm like, Joe, can you get it out? Let's get the words out, Joe. You kind of feel bad for him.
How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
First and foremost, I had no idea that Joe Biden ever suffered from a stutter. I think what we see on stage with Joe Biden, Jake, is very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable.
You are
to watch somebody on stage search for
that's so
questions
amazing. It's so amazing to me
and try and figure out an answer.
A cognitive decline.
Well, when you're trying to tell me that what I was suggesting was
I think that you were
stuttering,
mocking his stutter. Yeah, I think you were mocking his stutter, and I think you have absolutely no standing to diagnose somebody's cognitive decline. I would think that somebody in the Trump family would be more sensitive to people who do not have medical licenses diagnosing politicians from afar. Plenty of people have diagnosed your father from afar, and I'm sure it offends you. Your father-in-law from afar. I'm sure it offends you. You don't have any standing to say.
I'm not diagnosing him. What I'm saying, Jake,
you just talked
is
about
that
a cognitive
we can
decline.
See that Joe Biden is
I have one last
struggling
question for you, Lara. You can't
times on stage, and it's very concerning to a lot of people that this could be the leader of the free world.
Okay.
That is all I'm saying. I genuinely feel
Lara
sorry
Trump.
for Joe Biden.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, how does it make children feel? How does it make children feel when you make all the how do you think it makes a senile child feel when you make fun of senility? Think about that senile 4-year-old and how that child must feel when you're making fun of the 82-year-old senile president. Now, even if you ignore everything he's saying in that clip, even if you have no idea that Biden is clearly demented, you can tell from his demeanor that he's being dishonest. It's actually how remarkable how obvious he is about it. He won't let her finish a sentence. I mean, he launches into a whole diatribe that is taking place at the same time as Lara Trump is trying to answer a question. And he's just sarcastic the entire time. And then he starts talking about standing as if we're in a court of law and Lara Trump can't bring a complaint against Biden for some unknown reason. Of course, the idea that Biden was suffering from a stutter overlooks the fact that when people have stutters, it doesn't mean they're demented. They're still able to form coherent thoughts, which Biden could not. Additionally, any theory that Biden had a stutter could easily be cross-checked by pulling up any of the 10,000 videos of him throughout his career over the past several decades. You can compare how he spoke before versus how he speaks now. But Tapper didn't bother to do any of that, of course, because he was complicit in the cover-up that he's now writing about. So this book is self-serving and dishonest propaganda, and nobody should read it. After all, if he's willing to lie about his own involvement in the cover-up, there's no reason to think that Tapper will be honest about, say, the involvement of Mark Milley in covering up Biden's decline. This is the guy who famously said he'd tip off China about any U.S. military actions that might affect them. And he repeatedly vouched for Joe Biden's mental capacity during the campaign. Watch.
President Joe Biden has been portrayed by his political opponents and even some of his allies as too old to be president. I'm not asking for your political opinion here, but how does he seem to you?
Look, I'm not going to comment. I didn't comment on the former president's mental health, physical health, and I'm not going to comment on the current president's mental health or physical health. I think that's highly inappropriate for the senior officer of the United States military to do that. I would just tell you that I meet frequently with the president, and every single time I meet with him, he is just fine. How people interpret that is up to them, but I engage with him frequently and alert, sound, does his homework, reads the papers, reads all the read-ahead material, and is very, very engaging in issues of very serious matters of war and peace and life and death. So if the American people are worried about an individual who is, someone who's making decisions of war and peace and has access to, makes the decisions of nuclear weapons and that sort of thing, I think they can rest easy.
It'd be very inappropriate for me to comment on this, which is why I'm going to proceed to comment on it, is what we just heard from Mark Milley. Sounds a bit suspicious. Milley says that every time he spoke to Biden, he acted like he read the newspapers and had some idea of what was going on in the world. It may seem like kind of a low bar for the President of the United States to clear, saying that he's fine. Yeah, when I talk to him, he's fine. Fine? I don't know. I kind of want the president to be more than just, yeah, he seems fine. Yeah, it may seem like the kind of response that would merit a few follow-up questions, but to 60 Minutes and to Jake Tapper and Mark Milley, it was a perfectly convincing response. Joe Biden kind of seems to know what's going on. He seems fine. What more do you need to know? Perhaps in his comprehensive book with the Axios reporter, Jake Tapper will expose Mark Milley's role in covering up Biden's dementia. Or maybe Tapper will overlook it because Milley is now a useful figure to the Democrats' resistance agenda. The truth is, I'll never know because like everyone else in America, I'm not going to pre-order this book. I'm never going to read it. There's a version of the book that I would read, though. After all, Tapper knows a lot about the cover-up of Biden's mental decline because he was in on the cover-up. He was, in fact, one of the people leading the charge. If this book was a confession, if it was Tapper coming clean and being honest for the first time in his career, I might be interested in it. But instead, the book about the cover-up is itself a part of the cover-up, and that is why Jake Tapper and his new book are today canceled. Hey, YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads, you should go to dailywire.com and use promo code Walsh to get 2 months free on all annual plans. See you there.